I'm Stephanie Marsee, and I'm here today to talk about our experience. My husband and I quit our jobs, we got a camper, and we traveled full-time for about 14 months. And so I'm just here to share some of the things that we learned along the way. I just want to start off with a little video. It's just some little clips that Dane collected. This was actually an anniversary gift to me while we were on the road. So I thought it might be a fun way to start off, just watching a few pictures and little tidbits here. So. So, life on the road. The inspiration for this, what got us really wanting to, there you go, man. So the inspiration from it came from, like most things do, a lot of different influences. Day to day, Dane and I we always wanted to go on a big adventure. We really thought that we just wanted to see some things we never saw and meet some people that we've never met. And part of it was also, day to day we're getting into the more and more thing. It's like you get better jobs and start making more money and you start having more stuff, and then it kind of becomes a cycle. Like eventually, you need more to pay for more to get more. And when we were younger, everybody wants to get settled and get themselves established. But at one point, we were in Columbus. Dane was working at the Ohio State University. I was at a CPA firm. And we were successful on paper. We had nice things, but we weren't very happy. The quality of our life was really lacking. We weren't getting to spend the time that we wanted together. And we really wanted to spend some time in nature and spend more time, be more in control of how we spend our time just in general. So we kind of pulled the plug on the whole thing. Some of the areas where we got ideas from it, one, reading. I don't know if everybody's ever read Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac, but that's all about just living on the least amount of stuff as you can. So the whole idea of minimalism comes into play. It's like, we went to the top, like how much stuff can we have? Well, once we got satisfied with that, we kind of went the other direction and we're like, okay, how little stuff can we live off of? So I watched a lot of House Hunters International. I watched a lot of tiny homes. We watched container homes, things like that, and saw how other people were living and where they had these little places, but it was out in the middle of the woods, or more property, less house kind of thing. Especially with the property and stuff being so expensive now. Just trying to find any way to navigate through that. We also watched a lot of YouTube videos and things with the full-time RVers, kind of checking out the lifestyle. And then we used to take trips to Hocking Hills for fun, and that was something where we'd be down there and felt like that's where we really belonged. So eventually we're like, well, why don't we, instead of living in this life in Columbus and then, living the life we want on vacation, like let's see if we can do that every day. So that's what kind of led us to where we went. And we also had one other experience where we had moved and we got one of those pods that you can store your stuff in. And so for 3 months, I'd say about 75 to 80% of our belongings were in this pod, and it was amazing how little we missed it. Like we really thought that was going to be hard to go without it, but once it was in there, it wasn't as bad as we thought. So it all just seemed a little more doable day by day, and so we thought we would go for it. So that's what we did. We quit our jobs, we got the camper, and we stayed out. We hit the road on July 1st of 2021, and we stayed in it until September of 2022, so that's our timeline. So where I want to start, I think the biggest thing for anybody is to pick their rig. Like if you're gonna hit the road, like basically what you take with you, that's going to be your home. So the biggest thing is choosing the right house for you. So as you can see, there's all different types. The one thing that we noticed right away, if you're getting the drivables, you kind of have a deal where you're all in one. So unless you tow a car behind you, once you park that at the campsites or wherever else you're staying, you can't, it's a little hard to just pick up and move again. Like if you want to go out exploring and you want to see what's around town, you're a little locked down with that. We have seen some of the larger units where people will attach a small vehicle. We've seen little smart cars dragging behind them. Sometimes they'll take motorcycles on trailers and things. So people have figured out a way to do that. But once you get this all set up and you get your awnings out and all your dishes and everything out, you really aren't going to want to pack back up and move. So you're either, more than likely, you're going to stay put, or you have to have a second vehicle. And bigger rig, more expense, more stuff. Some people can do it, but it depends on how much you want to spend and where you want to go. The other thing with some of the larger units, especially if you get into the fifth wheels and the Class A buses, another part of that is it can be limiting to where you can park. It's, if you have to have 50 amp service, then you can only go places where you have 50 amp service. There's not a lot of small spaces, like you're gonna have to go to parks where they have pull-throughs, especially if you're interested in boondocking. I'll get into that a little later. Boondocking is basically living without utilities. And there's some really interesting places you go and you can stay for free, but you're probably not gonna fit in there. You might not be able to make it into the roads and the narrow pathways to get back to places to support a larger system like that. But if that's the way you wanna go, going from a house to that is still a change. It could still be cheaper than your house. You can still move. So it's just a matter of figuring out what fits better for you. I have a couple cousins that actually do the teardrop. They're a little more adventurous than we are. So they're outdoors mostly. Like when they go places, they do travel in fair weather. They take the teardrop and they go stay on the ocean. They're the ones that are going up the rough roads and just showing up in little empty fields on public land. So it gives them a lot of mobility. And then also when you get into some of these boondocking areas, you're meeting a different kind of person. Like not everybody wants to leave all that behind to get out there, and it can kind of be interesting who you meet along the way. So with all that in mind, we ended up with what we call the Nebuchadnezzar. That is our travel trailer. We wanted to do the pull behind because we wanted to be able to set up our home and detach the truck and take off and go biking and kayaking and explore the local areas. We also needed to do grocery runs and things like that, so it took pressure off of some of that. We wanted to be able to pull the camper with our current vehicle because when we started doing this, we didn't know if it was gonna last 3 weeks or 3 years. And so we tried to use as much of our things or our assets that we already had. We didn't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a lifestyle, get in a camper together and decide 2 weeks later that's not for us, and then be stuck with all of this stuff. So we were able to use our truck. Some of the other things about it, let me go to a little list here. Well, actually, I'll get into some of the other details in a little bit. But this was also in our spending budget. We had an idea of what we wanted to spend. We definitely wanted to be we wanted to be somewhere in between 10 and 20 grand. And so we were able to pull that off in here. That was pretty reasonable for us. So one thing with the campers is when you're looking at them, if you've had campers before, if you've never had campers before, we had never owned a camper. So this was all brand new. And so we went out and looked at as many campers as possible. And that's the way to do it. Looking at them online is one thing, but you want to physically go out and walk through these campers, see what they feel like to be inside. So we made multiple trips to Camper World. They were helpful. There's a place in Lakewood. Where's that? The RV wholesalers in Lakewood. They were really laid back. A lot of these places, they take a little information, they give you keys, or some of the units are open, and you just walk the lot. You go in, you go out, you look at things. A lot of them are really good about being very open with people kind of walking through. We stayed away from, we looked at the campers on Facebook, but we didn't make appointments with people because we felt like it was a little unfair for people that were trying to sell their units for us to come and kind of do the looky-loo thing with them. So we did stay away from the private sales. You know, we mostly went to the dealerships and places where it was more public, and we didn't have any problem finding ones to look at that way. So that's just how we decided to do it. I was lucky because I have an aunt that works at a dealership in the Toledo area, and so we were able to go look at their units, and I just got all kinds of helpful advice from her. So that was something that Dane and I were fortunate to have as part of our search. Some people, when they're deciding where to buy, they have to go through the whole private sale versus dealership. So also as newcomers, that was a decision for us, because the private sale can be good because you can save money. You know, you can get better deals if you're willing to go out and work with the public and buy off of Facebook. But with the dealership, you have somebody to go back to. You know, something's broken or something's not working right, you have somebody to call, you have somebody, you know, you have a little extra support. So talking to other newcomers, people choose one of two ways. Again, we were fortunate because we were able to use the knowledge of the dealership through my aunt without having to buy through them. But that is one of the things where we chose to go with Forest River because she supports this brand. So we were still able to ask her questions. And then especially when we went to look at the camper and do the inspection, she was really helpful with that. So that was kind of nice for us. Facebook, I will say, Dane and I never had a Facebook account, and we still don't really. We specifically established and use our Facebook account for the marketplace. That's all we do on it. So we popped a little picture of ourselves on there. We got onto Facebook because we had looked at the RV traders and looked at all the dealerships, but if you really want access to units, you can't beat Facebook. There is so much out there, and especially if you're willing to drive within a few hours of where you're staying, it just opens up a whole nother world. And when we were shopping for the campers, it was very competitive, and especially with, you know, ours is a 25 foot, so this size is very popular. And so it's almost like looking at houses. I mean, half the time they're gone before you even get there to look at them. And so getting into Facebook and stalking, you know, making sure to look at the ads in the morning, making sure to reach out right away, that was a big deal for us. And that got us the camper that we wanted. We were able to find one in Flint, Michigan and go and deal with them. Not everybody's comfortable with Facebook, and that's all right. It's not the only way to do things, but I will say we also just sold our camper yesterday, and it took 5 days on Facebook, and we got the price we wanted. So it's a very handy tool, and you can just get on and use the marketplace and close it back up, and you don't have to do anything else on there if you don't want to. So that worked for us. So here I've got a floor plan, and with us being full-timers, there were a few different requirements that we were trying to meet. If anybody wants, in the packet, I kind of did a wants versus need list. This is helpful if you're looking at campers for yourself, and this is something where this list, we made it and retouched it as each trip to RV World, each trip to the dealerships, we would revisit this list for, you know, practicality versus reality. So what we decided was, because of the amount of towing, we wanted to make sure again that our truck could handle pulling what we got. And then you also don't want to max out. Like, it'll tell you like, hey, this is the limit for your truck, but you don't want to drive around at the limit because your poor vehicle is going to take a toll after a while. So again, with us not being sure how long we wanted to do it, you know, we wanted to do things reasonably, so if we got back off the road, we still had a good truck to work with. So this one, they call it's 25 feet tongue to tail. So that literally goes from the tip of the tongue to the little, you know, where the propanes are stacked in the front to the bumper. And one of the major things for us was storage. I mean, we were going down to Florida. We were not going to have access. We couldn't just drive home and get back into our closets or get back into our storage unit. Whatever we needed, we had to take with us. And when we left, we left Michigan at the end of October, and we didn't come back till the following May. So you have several seasons of clothing with you. You have several seasons of equipment with you. So a big part of this one is that it had so much storage. Here you can see where the kitchen, these are full of cabinets, floor to ceiling here. The dinette, There's drawers underneath each seat that you could put stuff in, overhead cabinets over top. And then here was an access from outside that we use as a toolbox and where we place a lot of our equipment, like our electric lines. Here in the bathroom, we had a full-size linen closet. You don't get that a lot. We put in some removable shelving between the shower and the sink. And because we were able to do showers at the campsites and in other ways, we did not bathe in our shower. It was basically another big closet for us. We just kept storage and things in our shower as well. The bed here had 2 wardrobes, overhead storage. This part of the bed actually lifts up and there's like a chest. It's a large chest that you can reach from inside. It had several drawers underneath. And then from the outside, again, this whole area here was access. So that had our water lines in it. It had our backup seasonal clothing. It had backup supplies and equipment, extra toilet paper, extra paper plates, all that stuff. So as far as storage, and especially if you're going to be a full-timer, that's huge. We also bought maybe $50, maybe $100 worth of those removable hooks. You just hang hooks everywhere, because then you got, places to put your coats, places to put equipment, like adding robe hooks like all over the place was another big thing for us, helping get some more stuff in there. So I'm trying to think of what else. One thing was we didn't want to crawl over each other to get into bed. I don't know if you guys have ever been in the campers where the bed's pushed up against the wall. We didn't want to have to do that, plus we wake up at different times and whatnot, so we wanted to be able to come and go. So what we liked about this is that one, it's a private bedroom, which is very rare in a 25-foot. Like a lot of them are usually the open floor plan. So this gave us the ability to where if Dane gets up first and he's having his morning coffee, he can get out of bed without crawling over top of me and kicking me away. He can come out here, shut the door, and he can make his coffee, and there's a little bit of room for separation. Like everybody needs to get away from each other once in a while. So the privacy of the bedroom and the separate bed, that was nice. Having the U-shaped dinette, especially if you're going to do remote work, you are going to need a place to sit, and when it rains and the weather's bad, I mean, as much as you plan on being outside, there are times where you're going to be stuck inside. And so we liked the dinette because you could sit there at the dinette, have your meals if you want to work and do that, and then that actually converts into a sofa. So at the end of the night, if it's raining and we want to be in there watching a movie, you just break it down and you can hang out as well. Let me see, some of the other ones, the weight capacity and the weight limit was another. They have all those stats you can look up for your vehicle, so making sure that even once we pack this thing full, we'd still be okay. You can actually test yourself out. If you guys have ever heard of the CAT scales, they have them, a lot of the toll roads will have them at I'm trying to think of is it like the gas stations? But you don't have to go on the toll roads. We were up in Michigan, and you can go to like the Flying J's, some of the trucker gas stations, where the truckers are stopping and they're parked and they're getting their showers. They'll have the CAT scales there. And you can go in, it was free, wasn't it?
It was like $6.
Oh, okay, sorry, it was $6. But still, very reasonable. For $6, we were able to go and we packed everything and did a test run so we could see how much we were actually gonna weigh out so that we could figure out if we needed to leave anything behind before we actually launched. So the CAT scales were very helpful for that. Let's see what else here. Oh, we wanted to be able to get on our roof because we were doing all of our own maintenance. So we had a built-in ladder. It was something where we didn't really have a lot of room, so we didn't want to haul a ladder with us. So having the ladder on the unit was important. We also just went up there and hung out. Like some days you just want to sit on the roof and do a little meditation, or just you get an extra little view up there. So we really enjoyed hanging out on the roof as well. And for us, being full-time, we had a full-size refrigerator, not like the little dorm party fridges that you get, although those are nice too. But ours had a full-size fridge and a decent size freezer as well. And then another part of it was that they're starting to convert now where they're all becoming, they're not propane. So they're starting to change this into like a residential refrigerator. And people like it because, if you're gonna be hooked up and on the sites that have shore power, it's fine. But if you're traveling, and especially if you're gonna go without utilities, having this being able to run off of propane is a big deal. Like that's another thing where if you can't keep your food cold, so if if you don't have a refrigerator that runs off of propane, then every time you unhook and move, you're running the risk of your food going bad there. You're running the risk of it not keeping up where you're at. So we liked having the dual power refrigerator. Let's see here. Yeah, so that is that. A few things that we did just to make sure that we were road ready. Again, we didn't have a camper before, and then also we were traveling a lot. So even if you've had a camper, if you're gonna be out for 14 months, you really wanna make sure that what you have is solid. So we paid for a gentleman to come out and do a professional inspection. It's very reasonable. He charges $100 to do the full inspection. Ours actually went quick, so I think he only ended up charging us $50. But to have a professional come out and look at all the utilities and check everything out, that was very helpful for us, for him to give the thumbs up. Another thing was we upgraded our tires right away. You want to have good tires. The last thing you want is to be on the side of the road, like side of the expressway and traffic. The worst, if you can avoid being on the side of the road, the money is well spent on the tires. And we even upgraded to like it's a Goodyear Endurance tire, a little more rugged, you know, the mileage is still good. But our camper needed tires anyway, and so it worked out. Even if it's getting close, I would consider it. Another thing is Discount Tire. I don't know if anybody's been or you're fans, but Discount Tire has 1,128 locations all across the United States. So if you buy your tires from them, and then we went ahead and paid the extra, I think it was like $17 per tire. We pop a tire, we go in there, they replace it. And so that was something that we found very beneficial. We did end up popping a tire in Alabama. Unfortunately, it was on the truck. Well, actually, it was probably fortunate. It was better on the truck than the camper. But we were out in the truck running errands and popped a tire, and so we ended up going back to Discount to put new tires on the truck as well. That way, all the tires on both the truck and the camper, everything was covered at Discount, and we were able to go in and get a lot of good service if we got in a pinch. The backup camera, that, I think Dane found that very useful. He's a tech guy, so you know, when you're backing up is the hardest thing you're going to do in the camper. I mean, pulling is one thing, but trying to back it up and get it into spots, especially angling, if you can do that, that is like the acme, like the top of the mountain, I think, as far as being able to handle your own unit. So to help with that, we got the backup camera. Now, I'm old school, so you know how I back up? I roll down my window, I hang my head out, and I do this. Either way works, but you know, to each their own. So we had very different styles, but we still thought the backup camera was nice. You can also have it on while you're driving, in case you want to look behind, or you can even angle it and move it in case you want to watch the back of your camper. So it can be used for other things instead of just backing the camper up. A few things. Ours was a 3 Seasons, so we went around and refoamed. Like the 3 Seasons has a cover along the whole bottom of the camper, and there's little gaps as that thing goes bouncing down the road, things kind of come apart a little bit. So we went through and foamed all the gaps. Like we were trying to do preventive as far as critters getting in, so we tried to seal and cover as many openings in the camper as possible. So we went around and did the foaming, and then of course, you know, just getting some sealant or whatnot so you can touch up. Like you're gonna constantly be touching up, especially if you have the rubber roof. You are always gonna be doing touch-ups. You wanna keep on that so that you keep the camper from leaking, because one of the major things about the campers is having too much moisture or having water inside of it. You know, that'll ruin the camper quick. So those are a few things to prepare yourself. You're also gonna need to go to the BMV. They do a little camper inspection, get all your tags and all that fun stuff. So yeah, once we did all that, we were ready to hit the road. And then a few things that we did, what we wanted to do was we wanted to trade assets. Like instead of coming out of pocket for our camper, we decided that what we would like to do is try to take things we already had and trade them in to go toward our funding for the camper and the trip itself. So one of the big things was we sold our second vehicle, again on Facebook Marketplace, so in 48 hours. So we basically sold the GMC and were able to buy the camper with that. And because we were going to do some extra outfitting, we had a big old garage sale. Part of our trip also was to continue minimizing. Like we came from a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a 2.5 car pole barn, and you know how it is, it's just everything just keeps filling up with more and more stuff. So even if we decided that we weren't gonna stay on the road permanently, we still wanted to have less stuff to come back to, because then we don't have to have the 3-bedroom house and pole barn. You know, we planned on, if we did come back and resettle, we want something smaller. So it was kind of twofold. It was a good way to raise money for the trip, and then it was also a good way to start practicing letting go of things. And I mean, letting go of real things. We had already started with downsizing our clothes and downsizing our book collections and small stuff like that. But yeah, getting rid of all your furniture and things is a whole nother level. So it was a good experience to get us used to the minimizing. And I did a few different things. I sent mass texts to friends and family, because we made good deals on our stuff, so it's like a way for them to get a good deal on something and us to get rid of it. So I sold a lot of furniture and stuff that way. I did do some Facebook listings. We had a community garage sale in our neighborhood, so we got lucky with that. We sold our sauna. Luckily it's at my cousin's house though, so if you want to go over there and use it. You know, the best thing is to sell your stuff to your family, because then really you can go visit it anytime later, so that's ideal. I had some old jewelry that was just sitting in a box. So yeah, that was some of the stuff that we did, where we were able to take that money then and turn it into the things that we wanted for the road, and then to also let go of a lot of our things. So it was a good process. Funding also, Dana and I did some pre-booking. If you're going to be in the camper in the winter, there's only about 4 or 5 states really where everybody in the campers flood down to, like Florida and Arizona, basically everything nice and close to the equator, because that's where you can stay, and you don't have to worry about the weather and how it's going to affect the unit and your water flow and things like that. So part of it was strategic, because Florida books up very fast, as you can imagine. And so we were able to pre-book and pay for all of those sites ahead of time while we were still working before we had left our jobs. That helped us. We also started saving beforehand, so we were able to do some savings, because when we went on the road, we didn't work. Like, we left our jobs. We did a few odd jobs, and we did some trade, you know, we'll work to camp type of things. But that was something else where, you know, mostly we were just free to roam. So something else people do, what we learned when we were in Florida, like the Florida State Parks, for example, they have a nice program where if you work 20 hours a week, they will give you a free site. And 20 hours a week isn't that bad, especially if you don't mind being outside, and you know, some of it's trail maintenance and things that are kind of fun to do anyway. So that was one of the better deals around. Now some of them want you to work 40 hours a week. You gotta do the math on some of those, like by the, you know, it's at 40 hours a week, you can go get a regular job and more than pay for that. So each one's different. I would just be a little cautionary as far as how many hours you're really putting in, and make sure you're getting what it's worth at the end of it. But we talked to people that were doing it at the Florida State Parks and enjoyed it, so we thought they had a good deal down there. All right, so let's think of what else. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I just wanted to stop. Is anything I've talked about so far, does anybody comments, questions? Everybody's good? Okay. So another thing that we got into is residency. I mean, at the end of the day, you might be in a camper wandering around, but you can't get healthcare without residency. You can't get mail without residency. You have to keep a license intact. You need your insurances intact. So it really is a big deal figuring out how to claim residency. We did what, there's a lot of people that will go ahead and claim residency like with a family member. So that's part of what we did. Like we were fortunate, my dad was able to help us out with that. And then we were able to keep our policies and everything that we already had in place. We did look into short-term health care. That's one thing the retirees have an advantage of. You guys have the federal health care, so they have a lot more advantages as far as being able to move around and get coverage, because we're in our 40s and you never know. You never know when you're gonna get hurt. You never know when you're gonna get diagnosed with something. Like we're at the point where we can't just trot around in the camper without health care. So that was something where we needed to keep our healthcare in place. I did look at a couple short-term policies. The short-term was more like you can see a doctor, you can go to an urgent care, you can go to an ER, and you can go out of network, but that's it. So they have policies like that available. I think they were about $300 for the 2 of us, and this was back in 2021. So I don't know what they are now, and this is for Ohio and Wood County, so it is specific. Everything's different depending on the state and the county where you're at. But we were able to do it where we were able to establish residency with my dad. And then that way we were able to keep a healthcare plan. We didn't have to necessarily go short term for filing taxes. We were able to file all of our taxes and everything through that address. We changed everything over that way. We didn't have to pay a mail forwarding service. They do have them and it is available, because no matter how much you go paperless, certain things still come in the mail, medical bills, things from the BMV, depends on your situation. But luckily they were able to collect our things and then forward them to us. The one thing I thought was cool, the post office has they call it general delivery. So when we were in Florida, my dad would send stuff to Dane and Stephanie Marsee, general delivery, and then we told him which post office we were closest to, and they could ship things, and then we could go to the post office and pick them up. So that was helpful. Amazon's another one. If we were ordering supplies and things from Amazon while we were on the road, and they have pickups where you look on and they'll give you, here's a pharmacy, here's a store, you pick whatever's closest to you, and then they ship it there, and then you go pick it up. And was there an additional fee for that? It was all free as part of Amazon and what they do. So as far as getting things and having things forwarded, those were a couple of good options. And let's think, what else here? Oh, a big part of what we did too was storage. At the end of the day, even though we downsized and got rid of a lot of things, it was still amazing and how much we still had left over. So we did have a storage unit while we were on the road, put things in storage. We were fortunate again to have some family members that took some of our things that don't store well, like your tech gear, our record collection, important documents and papers, like things that we didn't want in a storage unit. There were 2 family members that went ahead and took a few things in for us and kept hold of them while we were on the road, so we were lucky that way. But otherwise, we went ahead and toted everything up and got it organized in the units and just left it there while we were away. And that ended up being good, because when we got back, decided to come off the road, we needed the stuff again. So luckily we were able to take it back out of the unit, and we had something to get started with then too. So that was kind of like a nice safety net for us, that we didn't get rid of everything, because then we didn't have to totally start all over. So part of this that I like to think about is that anybody can travel, but it's important to enjoy your travels if you're going to go through this much effort. So Dane and I tried to come up with a game plan to keep us in the game, and then especially on the day you're traveling, because there's a lot of responsibility and pulling, and traveling can take a lot out of you. So some of what we did is the night before we would travel, we would go ahead and start breaking down the camp. Anything outdoors, our chairs, our games, like anything like that, we would pack up and put away. We would pick out our clothes for the night before. I think we actually got to a point where I wore the same outfit travel day, because it just made it that easy. It's like yellow t-shirt, ripped jeans, hoodie. So something I didn't have to think about. I liked getting up, once you get up in the morning, you're trying to put the rest of the stuff away and get the rig ready. So we liked to have our clothing and everything picked out. Any supplies we would need, we'd move from the camper into the truck. Food is very important, because you get really, I don't know if you're like me anyway, if I don't get fed, I get feisty. And so a real easy thing to do to keep your energy up for the road and to keep the two of you from arguing any more than you possibly need to is to make sure you're fed. So we would get up in the morning and have a nice protein-filled breakfast, make sure to have some eggs or some sausage or both. Sometimes we would even cook that the night before, just so that was ready to go and cut down on time. We packed a picnic lunch every time, and then also for dinner, we made sure to have something that night that was fast, because if things didn't go as we planned on the road, the last thing you want to do is be sitting there waiting for food while you're still unloading the camper and doing everything else. So food was a big deal for us, and then we kind of enjoyed it. We tried to leave time where, so that's all the night before, but then when you get up the next day, we tried to make stops. Like sometimes we're really you're trying to really make miles, or you're trying to really get from A to B. Well, one of the things we did was our moves were always 4 hours or less. When we went from one spot to the next, we tried to keep it limited, because that 4 hours can easily turn into 5 with stops, or even more, depending on if you hit traffic or something. And so that was something where we kept it to 4 hours. We left early in the morning. We drove all daylight hours. We actually were very fortunate. We didn't have to drive in the evening at all. setting up the rig in the night can be tough, especially if you haven't been fed and your travels took longer. So we kept everything limited to 4 hours. We stopped regularly. If somebody had to go to the bathroom, we stopped. For lunch, we would usually find like some place to eat that was fun. Like we'd pull into church parking lots, we'd pull into little scenic parks. Like we tried to find somewhere we could sit, get our lunch out, have a break, enjoy ourselves for a few minutes, do some stretching, and get back in. And doing little things like that, it really made a difference. We also, Dane and I were very much a team where, we both drove, we both hauled, we both, when one person was driving, the other person was navigating, we both backed the camper in. Like we made sure that each of us could do everything, because if one of us got COVID or got sick with something else, if you're down a person and the other person doesn't know what to do, there were times where we were moving around more than once in a week. I mean, we made 45 stops in the 14 months and covered about 12 states. So we were on the go a lot. So we made sure that we had both equally knew how to set up, break down, and drive, just in case we ended up having just one person doing it all. And so as part of being together, we like to think of ourselves as a team. And we tried to treat each other respectfully, tried to treat one the way we would want to be treated, especially on travel days. We weren't always successful, but we really tried. Even if we were having other issues, it's like, okay, we put that away because we're getting on the road today. We can get that stuff back out when we get to the next spot. Let's just get on the road and get to where we needed to go. And it really worked, for the traveling. It was super helpful. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was boondocking. Has anybody boondocked before? Boondocking basically means no utilities, no electric, no sewer, no water. And the fun part about boondocking is that you end up in places like this. And it's a lot of places you can stay for free as well, if you're willing to go without the utilities. So with us trying to save money and make our trip less expensive, the boondocking was huge for us. We could go to a lot more places. We could then use the money on other things instead of the camping sites. I mean, I think we were pretty fortunate where our campsites, even when we did pay, we were able to stay within the $22 to $32 range. It can easily go over that. A lot of places start out at $40 and more, and when you're paying that per night, it really adds up. And so some of what we did was sometimes we would even try to go from a boondocking site to a paid site and back and forth, because then you could use the stuff at the paid sites to offset what you might need at the boondocking site. So you're leaving a paid site, well guess what, you use a dump station while you're there because that's factored in. You fill up with your water before you leave. You take that all to the boondocking site and then do what you need to do there. And then instead of having to dump on the road or pay for more water, then you go to the next paid site and then you just dump there, you get more water. So we were able to try to offset a little bit, going back and forth between the boondocking sites and the traditional sites. One of the other campground, they have it's the ACOE, it's the Army Corps of Engineers. We stayed at their places in multiple states. They tend to be nice as far as they're taken care of. That can range based on place. We showed up at one place that looked like nobody had been there in maybe 20 years. That was not an Army Corps of Engineers. But they were really good about being reasonable. And then anybody who served in the military, they do discounts. I believe that the military folks were getting them for $9 a night. And they have utilities. Those sites have the utilities. They have nice bathrooms. They had little extras. Some of them had games and things. Beautiful, beautiful lands and trails you could use. So I recommend the Army Corps of Engineer ones if you're going around. I would check into those. We looked for them a lot when we were going places. But the availability is mixed. It depends on where you guys are going to be. So with the boondocking, there's some stuff that you're going to need. Oh, this is actually one of the places we went. You can see Dane and I are right here. This was a place where we did pay $10 a night, but it was still no utilities, but they did have a toilet. But no shower, no electric or anything like that. And then as you can see, this guy came and fished, but other than us, we had this whole place to ourselves. We were there all alone, we were on the water, we were in the woods, and for $10 a night. So this is the kind of stuff you can get into if you can rough it. So that's the trade-off. Some of the things that we did to equip the camper for the boondocking is the lithium battery. So on your regular battery on a camper, you can run your battery down to about 50% usage, and by then you're at the point where you need to start recharging it. With a lithium battery, you can run that down to 0. So you get like twice the life out of the lithium battery. And then we use that in tandem with our solar panel. The solar panels are another one. Some of them will come, some of the units in the rigs will come with the solar panels mounted, but if you've ever monitored the sun during the day, it moves. So if you're parked, once you have that solar panel on your roof, you can't go anywhere. So once the sun passes or gets behind the trees or whatever, you're cut off. So what we went with is, it's basically, I wanna say maybe about yay long, about yay thick. It comes with a nice little briefcase. You fold it in half and stick it in the bag and take it with you. We did a 200 watt. We compared with people that were doing the 100 watt, and the usage for the 200 watt made a huge difference. We were able to fully charge, did we fully charge our battery in one day?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we could run our battery 100% down, and then if it was a good sunny day, we would actually be able to recharge that battery. And then what you would do is, the solar panel comes with kind of like an extension cord. So you go out there and you set the solar panel up and it's in the sun. Well, maybe a couple hours later, somebody goes back out, they move the solar panel over. Like you kind of follow and chase the sun around all day trying to catch what you can. But it's a great way to get power. One time our truck battery died someplace where we didn't have electric. We hooked the solar panel up and we got the truck recharged, and we got out of there on our own because we were able to generate our own power. So that was really cool. It's another big money saver. Like even with us being off the road, Dave needed to charge his scooter battery the other day, and he got the solar panel out and charged it through there. So you can use it for lots of things, and it can be a good money saver in general. When you're out there, people do like to be connected and do like to have the wireless internet and whatnot. So 2 of the things we did was we got a hotspot that actually went through AT&T, and I think it was only like $24 a month to take that with us. And then you pair that with, it's called a MIMO antenna, and then between the 2 of them, the MIMO helps extend and grab the signal, and then they feed it into the hotspot, so we were able to get on the internet. Like I did our taxes the 1 year from the camper. It could really make a difference as far as some of the places you get to, they have internet available, but it can be very spotty and very intermittent, so this was something that helped us assure that we could get access. It wasn't 100%, we couldn't use it everywhere, but even in a pinch, you could at least drive a little bit and set that up. You didn't have to like drive all the way into civilization, God forbid. So that was a nice way to stay out and about. The water jugs, the 5-gallon water jugs that people have, those are a good investment. And then we found this little tap online. I think it was what, 20, 25 bucks. You push a button, it spits the water out for you. You push the button, you're good. It has a little charging station with it. So having those 5-gallon water jugs, like I think we had about 3 of them that we would interchange, and so that was another saver. It helped us save supplies. We actually got a better quality of water as well. A lot of them you can fill up, like the Walmarts, the Krogers, you can fill them up anywhere between, we've seen anything from $1 to $2.50 for it. And then, yeah, so that was just a good money saver, a nice way to have some good water, and then it was gonna be kind of fun to use, the little tap and whatnot. And then we had a backup, just in case you were in an area and you're boondocking and you need to rinse off, but with 5 gallons, you have something to go on, even if you would, say, run out of water. So it also kept us from having to run back and forth. Like when we were in the woods, and say we were staying somewhere, we only wanted to have to run to the grocery and do a supply run once a week, because going back and forth, especially if you're an hour or more out into the woods, that's a lot of gas burning up to run errands. So we usually did it where if we were in a place for a week or 2, we did 1 run. So on that one day, we were getting our food and we'd go get the water and we'd do whatever we had to do that day so that we didn't have to go back again. So it eliminated trips and the time it takes to do all that. Another big one is the composting toilet. That one is interesting, I'll say the least. It does help with smell, because if you've ever carried around a traditional camper, you get on the road, things bounce around and all the smells start coming out of the black tank and whatnot. So with the composting toilet, it actually didn't smell as much as a traditional toilet. And with this, we were able to boondock, I think 30 days. We were able to stay off the grid for 30 days with this toilet. You just use cocoa core in it. You know, so the cocoa core is in the base here. You do your business, you churn it up. And there's a little ventilation system. We removed the toilet that came with the camper. Actually, Dane and Dwayne here did that. So we got to install it ourselves, which of course is another way to save money. As much as you can do yourself, it's always a good idea. So those guys took out our traditional toilet, they put this in. And then one thing that they did that was interesting is instead of having the, we'll call it the liquid waste, instead of having to pull this guy out and dump him all the time, we removed this, and the two of them fabricated a line with a valve, and they were able to run our liquid waste into our tanks below. So that was another way that instead of having to worry about constantly dumping that or where you're going to dump it, it went right to our holding tank, which was awesome. We didn't have to handle it, and again, we were able to stay out for like 30 days. Now, once you're done with the cocoa core, what you do is you can put it in the garbage, and as the cocoa core is a natural substance, so it's not considered sewage, you're allowed to throw that into a garbage. So if all you need after that is once you have it dumped, you just need access to a garbage, and then you can leave it, you know, in a dumpster or wherever. Garbage was another thing. When you're out there, they don't have trash cans, so you're on your own. So we burnt all of our paper, all of our paper products and whatnot. We went ahead and burned. And then what we did is we got, if you get like a 4-gallon or less garbage bag, those little 4-gallon bags, you take them to where you do business. So when we go into town and do our grocery shopping, or trying to think, would you stop for gas? Like maybe it's the day you're getting up and packing up and leaving. We would take those little bags and put them in the garbage cans at places that we do business. So then, because part of us, we didn't want other people to be responsible. Like part of our boondocking is we didn't want to take advantage of other people or do it at anybody else's expense. So I didn't want to like just be dumping illegal garbage all over the place. That makes this look bad and it makes campers look bad. But as far as like putting in a nice neat bag and leaving it at the gas station while you're filling up and buying $70 to $90 worth of gas, why not? You know, maybe leaving 2 garbages. The grocery store is another one, and really all the stuff that's in the garbage is mostly packaging from the grocery stores and stuff anyway, so I just took it back and put it in their garbage cans. So that was one of the ways we dealt with garbage. Okay, there we go. So that's the boondocking. Does anybody have any questions on boondocking? We're good there? Okay. So in general, just some other little money saving things that we went through. A lot of people think that when you get on the road that you're gonna build campfires and you're gonna eat over the fire every night. You can, but if you're buying firewood, it's expensive. Like a lot of places, even at the campgrounds, they still want, you can pay $5 a bundle. And a bundle is not even really enough to get your food cooking, especially if the kind of food, the fire sometimes needs to be going for a good hour or 2. So one, you're waiting several hours to be able to cook your food with who knows what kind of results. If there's any rain or wind, you might have trouble with that. And then buying wood is very expensive, especially if you're going to keep doing it. So we got really good at foraging. And the nice thing with everywhere we stay, they're happy to have you pick up the dead wood and clear it. You're helping clean up the forest, and then you get free wood out of it. So, and we actually just kind of enjoy it. Like we like going around and kind of, going through the woods and searching for stuff. Like we both grew up playing in the woods, and that's just something that we still enjoy. So we went out and foraged. Dane had his axe. We'd cut things up, break things up, and so we went out and looked for wood a lot. So wood foraging was a good way to save money. That was something else with the camper too, because we were in weather that was anywhere from 28 degrees to 90 degrees. So with our unit, we had a stove inside. So if it was cold, we could cook inside. And then we had an outdoor stovetop. So when it's hot, it's 90 degrees, you cook outside. So having some options like that, we're huge grillers. We grill all year round at home. And so we did hit the road without a grill. We made it till about December, and then we were fortunate we had a visit from our mother and father-in-law, and our Christmas present was a grill. We got ourselves a grill again. And it ran off our propane tank. We have propane with us all the time, so then we could just take one of the tanks, hook it to the grill, and boom, you're grilling outside. You just sit it on the picnic table. So that was a nice option. Free entertainment. Some of the things we did, we had kayaks, so we took them with us, and there are so many places where you can take the kayaks and have them for free. Beautiful places all over. Somebody gave us a bicycle, so we were able to take a bicycle with us. Florida has wonderful bike trails. Like there was actually a family down there in Canada that was driving from one end to the other, and they had everything with them in their backpacks, and they stayed in tents, and they were literally doing this bike tour, and were able to do it because of the networking and the bike paths down there. We're disc golfers. I don't know if you guys have seen, but they actually put in a disc golf course over here at Mary Jane Thurston. The discs are fairly inexpensive. Not Mary Jane Thurston. Yeah, sorry, that's a Toledo reference. At Casey Geiger Park, they just put in a disc golf, and it's all ages. And the discs themselves, like you can get them at Dunham's here in town. I've been over there. I just got some for our nieces and nephews, so we can disc golf when they come to visit. And the discs also don't take up a lot of room, because whatever you're taking, you're always thinking about space. Well, you can have a little bag with several discs in them. You get out there, the courses are all set up. All you gotta do is show up with your disc and you're ready to go. And then you also get to do some hiking, because you're hanging out in the woods wherever you are. So we did that. We also did a lot of reading. And because of us moving around, we didn't have an address, and we weren't necessarily to check out books the way we can at the libraries here back in our hometowns. So we did a lot of thrift stores and Goodwills. You could usually go in there and get books for 50 cents or $1. And then when we would even go to campsites, sometimes I became like a little bit of a bookmobile, where we would even just give the books away, give them to other people. Sometimes we exchange bocks. And then some of the campgrounds will have the little book huts where you can take a book, leave a book type of thing. We took board games with us. We have a bocce ball set. That's another thing that's just very self-contained in a bag. So the free entertainment was nice. Let's see what else here. Oh, the portable heaters. So a lot of the heating systems run off of propane, so you're using your propane tanks when you're heating the unit. What we found was nice was to have like a separate portable, an electric heater. So if we're parked at a campground where we're paying for the utilities anyway, we didn't use the house heat. We would go ahead and use that little electric unit, and because everything's so small, it heats up very quickly. And so when we were parked, we always used the electric heater, and then that salvaged more and more of our propane for other things. So the little electric heater is good. Let's see here. We talked about filling the water tanks before you move. Using the dump stations. The dump stations can vary. Every time we use that, I think it ranged from anywhere from like $10 to $20 to go and dump at a place. So if you're staying at a paid site, the dump is included, that's factored into the cost. But that is one thing where if you are boondocking, you are going to need to go somewhere and use the dump services. But other campgrounds, whether you're staying there or not, you can come in and use the dump station. Marinas where they have boats, those are popular for having dump stations. So then the money you save on camping boondock style, at that point you just saved yourself $100 or so from camping, or maybe even $200 depending on how long you stayed. So then paying $10, $15, $20 for the dump site's really not a big deal. So that's not where that might come into play. Hand wash stations. I think everybody's seen that, where somebody takes like an old detergent bottle and cleans it out real good and turns it and uses that to wash their hands. That's a big one. That saves you from your water usage, and especially if you're going to boondock, like we actually had 1 or 2 hand wash stations. You just throw them in the back of the truck when you're getting ready to go. So that's a simple thing. And then it was also nice just to be outside instead of having to run in and out of the camper, letting the ladybugs and all the other things in and out. Having a nice little hand wash station on the bumper of the camper can be a good way to it's convenient, and you can save a few bucks with using your water for that. We also did, I would say, meal planning. Like meal planning was a big one, where we sat down and decided what we were going to eat and what we wanted to have with us. So when we went to the store, we knew what to buy. We weren't buying things we didn't need, especially when it's hot and you don't have a lot of storage room. Things go bad easier, or you might not have room for as many things. So we thought it was important to do meal planning so that you get what you need and not a lot of what you don't need, and then you also use everything so that you don't have much waste. So that meal planning was a big deal for us. We talked about the gallon jugs, running all the errands on the same day. oh, laundry can be really expensive. And unless you have a larger unit, you're not going to have a washer dryer with you. So at first we tried doing the, we sorted it, here's the color, here's this, here's that. It's hard. It's hard to keep that all separated, and then also like you'll spend the whole day there waiting for multiple batches to go through and then multiple batches to dry. I used to have stuff, like I'm tall, so I don't, I try not to get my stuff to shrink, I'm always pulling sleeves and making sure pants are long enough, so if you're trying to like hang that stuff, there's nowhere to do it. It's just very time consuming. So we got to the point where we just started buying a lot of athletic gear, and we just threw everything in. Everything just went into one pile. Color, whites, whatever, threw it all in one batch, put it in the high-powered dryer, and just did it all in one setting. So laundry, if you're particular about your laundry, that can be a real challenge because you're gonna spend a lot of time and money. It's like it could be $5 sometimes for the larger units. Now you do get 2 and 3 batches out of that, but you can spend anywhere from 10 to 25 bucks easily, just doing laundry for the week or for a 2-week period. So that was another one where we just learned to bulk everything up and just have stuff with us that wasn't so finicky. Leave your fancy stuff at home. You just want to have the stuff that's very usable and very easy to take care of when you're on the road. So where are we at time? Okay, well, actually this works out good because I'm about wrapped here and I think we're hitting our little timeline. I did want to give you guys we did a lot of research, especially since we had never done any of this before. So research was important to us, and it was also amazing at how much information we could get from people that have already done it. People that have already been there, listening to them speak. Some of the YouTube channels we got into, the Fate Unbound, that's a couple that are full-timers, kind of do and don'ts in some of their experiences. The All About RVs, this helped us a lot with figuring out what maintenance we needed to keep up and what repairs we needed to do, which worked out really well. You're dragging this unit down the road, and so things are gonna come apart and things are gonna need to be repaired. And if you don't keep up on that, things can start looking shabby very quickly. The outside of the camper needs washed and touched up here and there. So it's really cool to learn how to do that stuff yourself. You're gonna get more value out of your rig, and then especially if you go to sell it later, and it's just gonna make it easier to use when everything's functioning properly. So the All About RVs was helpful. The Technomedia, that's where we learned about the MIMO antenna and the hotspots and things like that. If you're gonna have any tech gear with you, the solar panels and stuff, they do a good job with that. This was a gentleman playing with sticks. The interview that I printed out, he did a good job with some of the interviewing and then how to do an inspection. Like Dana and I actually were able to teach ourselves how to do a professional grade inspection when we were looking at the campers. And so I did put that in the packet, I put the interview questions. I found that, when you're on Facebook, you've never met anybody, so the interview, then the phone call was important to me. It gave me a gauge of who I was dealing with, and then it was also a way to collect information about the rig. So I got some tips and tricks on the interview questions, and then once we got there, the unit we bought, we spent 5 hours there that day. We spent 2 to 3 hours doing the inspection, running the utilities, checking everything, and then it took a little while too to get the money figured out and to get it hooked up and stuff like that. When we bought our camper, it was from 4 hours away, so we wanted to show up that day, get it looked at, get it bought, and get it hooked up so we could take it home, and we were able to do that based on doing the work ahead of time with the interview and being prepared for the inspection. Plus, you don't want to show up and be planning on, trying the utilities and then find out it's winterized. That's stuff you want to know ahead of time so that you're not wasting trips back and forth or not able to make the deal because you couldn't get the information you needed to make an offer. So he was good for that. There were a couple of the websites. Let's see here. The recreation.gov, they're the ones that give you all the access to the federal land and anything that they have in their sites. That is where I found the Army Corps of Engineers. The Reserve America, those are more of state lands, and they also have some private lands on there that you can book through. Camp Pendion's another one where people go on and put their own impressions of places they've stayed. Sometimes they'll include pictures and whatnot. I went ahead and put the Florida State Parks on there. We booked with them a lot, and especially if you're going down there, make sure you book ahead. Everybody floods down there. So we booked we didn't stay, we booked all of our stuff in May and June, and by June, Southern Florida's gone. Like, you are not going south of Punta Gorda, it's booked. So just to give you a heads up, if you plan on going down there, you wanna get in ahead of time. And then especially now, I haven't been down there since all the storms and stuff, so I'd imagine that situation hasn't gotten easier. And then Flex Jobs, if anybody's looking for remote work online, that's one of the websites you can use, and that's what they specialize in. And if anybody wants any of this information, I can make sure you have it later too. And then the podcast, the Stress Less, Dane actually got a discount code from them that we use to buy our lithium battery. Like sometimes they'll do that on different podcasts and websites and YouTubes. So you can save a little money getting the discount codes and then using them. The RV show, that's a couple of full-timers. They do how-tos, and their big thing is it's like the latest and greatest. Like they follow manufacturing, they follow the industry, so they're gonna tell you a lot of trends, you know, what rigs are being made, and then they evaluate a lot of the equipment that goes with the rigs and some of the features they have. The RV Life Entrepreneur, that's another one that will cover different ways you can make money and work from the road. And then the one thing I don't have on any of these is the Weather Channel. If you are going to RV, Dane and I were on the Weather Channel all the time. Like the days we were planning our trips, you know, we're looking to see, is it going to storm? You know, what's the wind going to be up to? You know, is it gonna be blowing us around? Another big one was when we were staying in places where it was getting colder overnight, we wanted to make sure that we disconnected our water so that we didn't wake up and not have water the next morning. So we were constantly on the Weather Channel. Even now that we've gotten resettled at home, I'm on the Weather Channel every morning and every afternoon. You just get used to watching it and then knowing what to wear and all that other stuff. So we became quite familiar and quite grateful for the weather apps. So that was our experience. Does anybody have any questions, comments, anything like that?
So when you started out, you really had no idea how long you might be out?
We had no idea. Like we did not know. We didn't know how long we would last, to be honest. So yeah, we just went into it. It was actually it was good. We used to be very much like planners and wanted to know what everything was gonna be ahead of time. We purposely did this to take us out of our comfort zone. And there were some times where we were quite uncomfortable. Like it wasn't all sunshine and, you know, and start, like we never quite figured out how to give each other enough space. You know, there were some real challenges. If you have any issues going on, they're gonna come out once you're in 200 square feet together every day. Also, you know, we had worked before then, so like the retirees understand, it's like, you know, they go to work, you go to work, you meet up afterward, all of a sudden, nobody leaves to go anywhere, and you're together all the time. It's a big adjustment, so I'm kind of glad. Part of it was us stepping out of our comfort zone and just going for it, because I really don't think we would have done it any other way. Like if we knew how challenging and how hard it would be to resettle, I don't know if we would have done it, so I'm kind of glad we actually just pulled the trigger. It was just like that desire to just try something.
What states were you in?
We did Ohio, Michigan, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, Florida, Texas, Kentucky, and Tennessee.
Oh,
Did I say Louisiana? If I didn't say Louisiana, then Louisiana too. But we weren't prepared to drive in the mountains, and we had to get down to Florida we dodged the mountains. And we had some family in Missouri, so we kind of went over to there, went down, landed in the Panhandle, and then back over. So that's how we handled that.
Did you make any friends that you will stay in touch with?
We made some friends. There was a family, like there was a couple that had 2 small children, and they were doing full time, and they were based out of Iowa or Idaho. There was a couple, Dave and Estelle in the casita. They were in one of those little tiny casitas together, and they were based out of Florida. Colleen and Dan were in a 5th wheel. So it's really fun to meet other people. And especially like everybody's just kind of hanging out at the campground, so it's not like in, you know, everyday life where you see somebody, it's like, oh yeah, I gotta go, I gotta do this, you know, you're just out there. So you're just sitting there and talking. Like I can't tell you how many people invited me to come look at their rigs, to come inside and talk about. It was fun to compare notes on equipment and things like that. especially the boondockers. We met people that do stealth camping, where they'll just take their truck and drive it into like some high grass and just like stay there overnight. Like one guy was on a motorcycle and he's, stayed in farmland, and he puts his stuff in a bag and puts it in a tree and then takes off and goes on motorcycle rides every day.
Oh.
I mean, there are just all these different people out there doing different stuff. So it was wild. A lot of free spirits.
Yeah.
Once in a while there's one where you're just like, but it was very safe, and we got treated well, and we feel grateful.
Yeah.
And we try to treat other people well also.
You never felt afraid?
Did we ever have any? The one place that was really, the only time we got afraid was we went to Texas, and unfortunately it was the beginning of storm season. We got a little antsy being in Florida, so we're like, all right, let's get out of here, but we couldn't go north yet. So we went over, and then we got there, and we ended up spending the night in the bathroom. Like, we had to pack our stuff, and the phones went off, the storm was coming, so we had packed our bags the night before, kind of knowing it was coming. We had to grab our gear and a couple folding chairs, and we spent that night in a concrete bathroom. So I think that was the only time we were really afraid. And it was more from weather than from people. We didn't have, there was one guy that was running his gray hose through our thing that I thought about confronting, but I ended up talking to him, and we didn't have a confrontation. I ended up accepting it, and then he ended up being friendly anyway. So that was like the only thing I ran into with like a person.
You want to mention about the women being out there alone?
Oh, the women. So we ran into women, a lot of women that were on their own and doing this completely alone. We were staying in Mayo, Michigan. They have equestrian, what is it? It's like the Luzerne campgrounds. It's what's the name of the Manistee, the two forests, do you remember? I think it's like the Huron Manistee State Forest. They have two giant state forest systems that have combined. And so they have a lot of boondocking and free areas to go. Well, the one place we got to, we were the only ones there. And then all of a sudden the next day, these women are pulling in, and they've got big rigs, and they're pulling horse trailers, and then next thing you know, they're riding around camp on their horses, and the horses are hanging around camp. And so we saw a whole group of women that were out there doing that. And we regularly, I saw one woman with a teardrop. We saw one woman with a drivable. Like I was very happy to see women out there on their own camping. And then for me personally, I was always somebody who was kind of afraid. I thought, if you walk around in the woods alone, something's gonna happen to you. Because sometimes that's how how society makes you feel.
Right.
And so as part of this, I started hiking alone. I didn't take my phone. I did take a mace, mostly because there might be an animal.
Yeah, right.
But I actually started hiking alone, because sometimes we have so much fear of things that we miss out. We miss out on experiences. And what I learned is, like, half the time when you're out in the woods alone, nobody even knows you're out there to begin with. Like, there was times where we stayed in places that were so remote, and then for you to run into them is one thing, and then for you to run into them and have them be prepared to attack you, it's just not the same. And since we've been off the road, like, I have now been starting to hike and bike on my own, and I feel safe. There's precautions you can take. I only go during the day. I usually know the trails first. I make sure I'm, familiar and I can get my way around. And then since we've been back, I went and stayed alone in hiking for a couple nights, and I sat at the fire at night in the dark by myself, and it felt good. It felt good to know that you can do those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's for everybody can do it within reason.
And any idea, like, if you were trying to do it, like, on a budget? Because some people do that. I mean, they think, like, you can notice on 33 that there's a campgrounds there. There's some people have put sheds there, so they're permanent structures, and in the winter I see that they're lit up, so people are living there.
Oh, yeah, where they're
24/7 at that campground. So I just wonder if they're doing it to save money and how things, like.
And I think some of them are. I mean,
Yeah.
like, with us resettling right now, like, we are staying someplace, but we haven't, we are looking we want land. Like, Dane and I are at a point where property is more important than the house for us.
Yeah. Mhm.
So we would rather have more of our money go into, having a piece of property. And then we've learned that we can live with less house and less stuff. So we've considered you know, trying to find a piece of property. Like, we even talked about, you know, maybe we'll find a piece of property and we'll live in the camper while we build something. You know, some people will live in a camper and then build a pole barn. I have an aunt and uncle that built a giant pole barn that was big enough to pull the camper in.
Yeah.
So then they could be all seasons. Like, if you're gonna stay out in the winter, there are ways you could have a rig here in the winter. You just need to bulk up and, you know, do the weather barriers and stuff like that. But some people, they'll build pole barns. Or the idea, like, instead of buying a property altogether, you buy the property and then you pay as you go. You know, you make some money, you build a simple structure. You know, you work for a few more years, you add a room. Like, you make it so you can build as you're going instead of just like having it all at once and then just paying the mortgage off.
Yeah.
So coming back to the housing market, I will say, part of when we got on the road, we've been looking for houses for like 7 years. And we're looking for something very unique, so we usually only went and looked at like 1 or 2 properties a year, especially with everything being so competitive. So part of our deal was like, all right, we're gonna stay in this camper and we're gonna wait out this housing market. Like, if we have to stay in this thing for 3 years, we will. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, so we're coming back, and unfortunately, the housing market hasn't gotten any, it's not exactly, you know, turned around, let's say.
Yeah.
So we are very much trying to figure out like what to do with the way things are and what we're able to do. And now living more simply has really opened up more options than before when we were trying to look at, you know, $200,000 homes.
Yeah.
So it opens up options for you.
Yeah, there's let's see, it's near Ottawa, it's part of Putnam County, and my sister lives up there, and she says a lot of people will build a pole barn and live in it before they start then their house, and they call them shouses then. They're like a shed and a house.
And down in Florida, there's entire towns that are nothing but RV parks.
Oh, yeah.
An entire town that is just either modular type of homes or RVs that have been, and then you see the community has built around there.
Yeah.
You know, there's always Walmarts that are in those areas. So so people, you know, it's harder up here to do that unless you can stay warm. But there's people. It's definitely us. We've learned there's a lot of different subcultures that are involved in the RV, either living or traveling.
Yeah. I always like to watch the tiny home, different things. I'm always turning into YouTube when I got my graduate degree a couple years ago, and that was always a break. I'd be watching a 25-minute.
Yeah, well, now they have rentals. Like, if you want to try living in a treehouse, like, you can go to parks and rent a treehouse. Like, you could, the tiny homes, like, those are starting to be options where the try before you buy is a nice way to do it. So we have talked to people that will rent a camper first. So they, you know, now with that kind of opening up, like, there are ways where you could go try it for the weekend, go try it for a couple weeks. You know, because 2 weeks might be enough. Like, you might know after 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I do think sometimes it is a good idea, like, and now that it's more available, you know, there are ways to try that kind of stuff out and see what you really think.
Can I interject something?
Yeah.
There's a real good book out there, if you haven't read it already, it's called Nomad. Have you read that?
No.
Okay, see if you can get a hold of that, and it's basically about people who, that's all they do is they live to travel. And they work and they live in their vehicles and stuff like that. It's really an interesting book. But it talks a lot about living on a strict budget.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that, like, the whole, like, the live to travel, I think a lot of people do that, where they just, you know, they do enough to keep their lifestyles going.
Yes.
Like, some of these, we have some friends that they go country to country and they do tutoring and teaching, and that's what they do. Like, they come back home, and sometimes they'll work a little bit here and make just enough so that they can head back out.
Yeah.
Like, we have a buddy that's been in Madagascar and Thailand, and he, you know, and then he'll come back here and he'll go to Florida and do some landscaping, and then back he goes.